All right, what's up, all? Day 3, NFL draft. Good news is it's hard to reach now. It's
The
getting
good
hard.
news is that I'm awake and my got some caffeine in my system, and we're gonna pull through the third day of the draft.
The
That's
good
that's
news,
the good news.
when the Patriots take a 5th rounder today, it's not that big a deal. Okay? That's the good news. That's
Okay,
where
can
we're
I
at
just?
right now.
I want to go on a small mini rant about that point, okay? Because look, I'm one of these people. I comb through the tape beforehand. I rank prospects on my own. I do the whole big board thing too. I look at consensus boards and all these kinds. I do that. I do it all the time too. Right? That's my thing as well. But the notion that these NFL teams have to follow what us in the media think is the consensus of the order of the players coming off
I'm
the
going
board.
on one after, by the way, so go ahead. Yep.
I'm just not really sure. I don't really see how that discourse is useful. Like, because so Mel Kiper had Tyquan Thornton as his 150th rated prospect, and the Patriots took him at 50. Okay, well, who's to say that Mel Kiper is smarter than the Patriots? Who's to say I'm smarter than Patriots? Who's to say that any of us are smarter than any of these people? I just think that at some point in time we have to say the media is the media, the league is the league valued the player, the board sets the value, and let's give it a rest with, oh, they reached here, they reached there, because ultimately if Tyquan Thornton ends up being 1,000-yard receiver 2 years from now, is it really going to matter that they made him the 50th overall pick in the draft, right?
Okay.
Is it really going to matter?
Yes. So here is my counter. There's one thing between the media versus the league. And so if people were saying left and right, oh my God, yeah, everyone was taking that guy. That doesn't seem to be the case. And I know there's been a tweet or two that says, oh, yeah, that actually there were teams who had him high on their board. I don't
Right.
buy that. I don't buy it. So the Patriots now having their own board should benefit them, because that means they should be able to get these guys later and not have to spend high draft capital on them. That's a gift. If the Patriots believe the really good players are available later, terrific. Then do something with those picks that people covet, which is either trade them or take other people who you can't get later. And that's a gift. If you think you're getting second rounders in the 5th round based off of your board, that should make your team stronger. Jumping 2 and 3 rounds to take these guys is bad asset management, no matter how you look at it, if the rest of the league doesn't view them that way. I don't care the media versus the league, but if the Patriots are literally on their own grid here, that's bad asset management no matter what. So yeah, you could say I love that guy. Great, get him later. My second issue is the expectations it places on them. If you drafted Thornton in the late 4th round, people would have patience. If he contributed at all in 2 to 3 years, great, that's gravy. He's now going to be judged against players like AJ Brown and DK Metcalf and Debo Samuel and the other players taken around them, because those guys are second round picks. Those guys are second round picks.
But those guys were second round picks 3 or 4 years ago. There were 6 wide receivers drafted in the 1st round this year. It's a different ballgame.
Fine, doesn't matter. They will at
Jahan
least
Dotson in 2019 is a second round pick.
They
right?
will at least be judged by the players around them.
It's totally fair. If you want to judge them against Alec Pierce and Sky Moore and George Pickens and those players, and that's absolutely fair. Going back to 2019, it's a different ball game.
And no, I don't think Bill cares for the people in the chat. I don't think Bill cares. That's not the issue. The job is you have to assess what your competition is going to do. And if your competition is not taking these guys where you're taking them, then it's your job to find a way to take them later. That's it.
Okay. So the two things that I'll say to this: one, from everything that I've pieced together about the Patriots draft board this year, their draft board is notoriously small. It's usually around 80 to 100 players.
Yeah.
Maximum of guys that they have draftable grades on. This year, it's even smaller. It has shrunk even smaller this year. They are not, and I'm not using this as an excuse. I'm just trying to explain to people how they're viewing this draft as a whole. I don't think that I don't think they really like the draft. Okay. I don't think they're really that goo goo gaga over any of the prospects in this draft. So as a result, they take a guy like
They
Cole
trade
Strange.
every pick for players,
Right. Well, they take a
or
guy like Cole Strange
trade them into future drafts.
because it's a floor pick, right? They're comfortable with where his floor is going to be in the NFL. They take a guy like Tyquan Thornton because he's got huge speed and huge upside. So the other thing I would mention is just with the wide receivers in particular, because I think that that's the Cole Strange pick at this point. It is what it is. They were going to take a lineman there, and they took the lineman that they rated the best on the board. And quite frankly, their track record with linemen is so good that if Dante Scarnecchia truly believed that Cole Strange was the best available guard where he was,
But
taken,
Dante didn't really scout on this draft. And when Dante was asked about it in the Herald today by Nancy Garigian, he said, I haven't seen him play, but if they took him, they must like him. So we didn't get the Dante Scarnecchia seal of approval here.
I don't believe that for 1 second. And
I
love
mean,
Karen. I love Karen. Like, she's one of my favorites. I'm not trying to say that she's doing a bad reporting job. I know she was just quoting him. But Scarnecchia has gone down this path of trying to disconnect himself from the team as he goes and talks about things publicly. And he said, "Oh, I'm not in the building anymore. I'm not. I don't know. I'm not working there anymore. You're gonna have to ask somebody that works there. What, so on and so forth." And it's all bull. It's all a load of malarkey. I've talked to players on the Patriots roster, and they all tell me, I've been tight with some of those guys in that offensive line room over the last couple of years, and they all tell me that Scar's fingerprints are all over the offensive
That's fine.
line.
And when I read that article today, I was really hoping to see something along the lines of, "Oh yeah,
well, let me tell you why.
I loved this guy." Yeah.
I'm going to tell you why he did that. Last time when the Patriots took Michael Onwenu, Scarnecchia went public with a quote where he said, "Yeah, they asked me to watch Onwenu. They had already kind of picked him through the dime, through the haystack, right? And they brought him to me and they said, 'What do you think about this guy Onwenu from Michigan?' And I said that I liked him and I gave him a thumbs up. And after that happened, everybody gave Scarnecchia credit for discovering Michael Onwenu, for finding Michael Onwenu in the draft and telling the Patriots to draft him. I think that he's deflecting. I think that he wants the credit to go to the guys that are actually running the draft room right now, to Bill,
that's
to
fair.
Patricia, to Grow. I don't think he wants to take credit for, "Oh yeah, I watched Cole Strange and I gave him the thumbs up," and now everybody will say, "Oh well, Cole Strange got the Dante Scarnecchia seal of approval." Fine, done, right? So I think that he's trying to give the credit, let the guys that are in the room here this weekend take the credit. But I agree with you to an extent that you have to watch the board relative to the other 31 teams. But as somebody in the media who ranks prospects and who combs through mock drafts and does this whole thing for months on end with Alex and right here on Patriots Press Pass and does this whole thing, I stop caring about what the media consensus board says.
I don't care about the media consensus because we've seen it. How many guys did people have first round grades on and then they're drafted and then we're like, "Oh God, he's still there. He's still there." So that's fine. The media sometimes can get super high on one guy, not high enough on another. And that's totally understandable. But in terms of like leaping way, way, way up, the Patriots have done it twice. And maybe every other team together has done it twice. You know what I mean? Is like, so again, it's just historically on brand.
So here's the other thing I'll say, and I said this on Patriots Beat this morning.
And historically, it hasn't worked a ton. It worked with Logan Mankins, but it hasn't worked.
McCourty.
It hasn't worked a ton with other guys where like the Tavon Wilson, Jordan Richards, these second round, with like what, like this is a sixth rounder, dudes,
Yeah. So I said this morning on Patriots Beat, and I think that this is generally where this feeling of resentment towards this draft so far for the Patriots is coming from. And I'll be honest, I'm trying to fight it off myself because I kind of feel this way too.
I know where you're coming from. You're trying to look at it in a sensible way. I'm trying to look at it
objectively.
Yes.
And I'm trying to say, look, ultimately, we don't actually know what any of these guys are going to be until we get them on an NFL field, in an NFL practice, in an NFL game. So let's give them all a chance. Let's get to training camp and let's get to the preseason before we write off Tyquan Thornton as a bust, right? And I get the optics of it. It's a Patriots wide receiver in the second round. It's a guy, he's got some measurable comparables to like a Bethel Johnson, for example, and stuff like that. So I understand where people are coming from. But I think the biggest the issue that I have with the draft is not necessarily that the Patriots aren't going based off of the consensus board. The biggest issue that I have is not even an issue, but the reservations I have about the draft are last year, the Patriots' first 2 draft picks were from Alabama, the national champion Crimson Tide. They took the quarterback and the best pass rusher from the national champion roster. Then the next 2 picks, Ronnie Perkins and Ramondre Stevenson, were 2 Oklahoma guys.
Yeah.
So they went blue blood, brand name prospects, and they had the best draft that they've had probably since like that Jamie Collins draft or maybe the Hightower Chandler, like in the last decade, easily. Going off of, we're just going to go Power 5, blue blood, blue chip prospects. We're not going to mess around in the draft.
Yeah, so that was good. What happened?
So the response to that is easily, for all the and Bill we trust and now everybody that's going to defend the wall, is they also did that in 2018 when they took Isaiah Wynn and Sony Michel from Georgia, and it didn't work out as well as it did last year. But I think that that's the problem that I look at is, okay, last year you did the consensus, you went chalk, and you hit an absolute home run of a draft. And then this year you're right back to drafting guards from Chattanooga in the first round. And it's not necessarily that I don't see it with these players, or I don't see potential with the players that they selected, but that reverse course does give me some concerns. It gives me some pause that we're back into, like you said, the Tavon Wilsons and the Jordan Richards and the, Kyle Duggars end up being a great pick, but the Cole Strange pick is very, very similar on paper, different positions, obviously, but very, very similar in terms of elite athletic tester, Senior Bowl guy, small school. So maybe if it ends up working out as well as Kyle Duggar did, then that's still a good pick. But I understand where the reservations are coming from, that you're not getting the blue blood Power 5. You're not picking teams that were picking players from teams that were in the college football playoff last year. You're taking guys from Chattanooga and Houston. Baylor's not really a program they draft from. They haven't drafted a guy from Baylor since 2006. Baylor wide receivers don't typically translate into the NFL. So you look at all these types of things, and I get it.
Yeah. Real quick, before we continue on this path, because again, this is going to be the story because we're going to continue talking about this. But what do you the Patriots are almost on the clock here at 121. Yeah, some names here that you like, before they make their pick.
There's 2 themes of this draft right now. The themes of the draft for the Patriots are athleticism and speed, and off the beaten path, right? Those are the two things right now. And small school guys, or guys that were ranked lower, like we were just talking about. So I look at that, and I look at Tyreek Woolen and Zion McCollum. Woolen went to UTSA, University of Texas San Antonio. Zion McCollum, FCS, Sam Houston State standout. Really good prospect from Sam Houston State. And as I say this, Jalen Amore Davis from Alabama, one of the starting corners at Alabama last year, just went 119 to the Ravens. So I thought that maybe they would be interested in the Bama corners, a guy like Josh Jober, Jalen Amore Davis. There are 2 starting corners last year. One of them is gone. Carolina apparently has traded into 120. So they just jumped the Patriots for something.
For a punter.
They felt like they had to jump the Patriots for something here. So we'll see what it ends up being. But yeah, look, I look at it, and I still would love to see them double dip at corner. To me, Marcus Jones is definitely a slot corner. He's 5'8". He's not going to play on the outside. He's 100% a slot corner. And I also think they see a lot of value in his return ability and his ability to contribute in that vein. So they got kind of, the football player, right? They got the guy that's just a football player, and they'll put him somewhere, and they'll find a role for him on defense, and they'll let him go off on special teams. And that's kind of the way that they're going to go with that. Now I would like to see the pure outside guy, the pure outside corner. Whoever's the highest outside corner on your board is who I would take with this pick. They have 3 picks in the 4th round. They can hit other holes on their roster, other places. You know, they want to take a running back. They want to take a defensive lineman. They want to take a linebacker. You know, they can go ahead and use those other 2 4th rounders on guys like that. Here, I still am look at their depth chart.
Outside of needs, where is their depth?
Where is the depth on the Patriots roster right now?
Where is the depth in the draft? Where is there still talent in the draft?
I think, okay, so the Panthers leapfrogged the Patriots for Brandon Smith, the linebacker from Penn State, which definitely could have been a Patriot target. The Patriots are now on the clock officially. Brandon Smith is a very, very good athlete, huge combine tester, really raw, but has the measurables. There's been some comparisons in the past to Jamie Collins with Brandon Smith. So clearly the Panthers thought that the Patriots were going to take Brandon Smith at 121. I could definitely see that as a fit. I had him on my big board, so there's a chance that maybe that is actually the truth, and the Patriots just lost their guy here. So it'll be interesting to see if they make a pick still, or if they try to trade down now if Brandon Smith was their guy.
Gotcha. Okay. So Patriots are on the clock, pick 121. Also, you know, trade possibilities, teams trying to jump in here into this 4th round are always possible. You know, if you're having Kadarius Toney sorts of conversations, they begin right around now. Other names I've seen, you know, possibly Arizona Cardinals looking to move in to this round. Andy Isabella is a guy that could also be dangled potentially.
There's no trade interest in Andy Isabella right now.
I know.
I think it's really funny when these reports come out today on the draft that Andy Isabella.
There's been no buzz on Andy Isabella. I know.
Okay, so the Patriots took Jack Jones from Arizona State, a corner, outside corner. This is, again, they're going off of their board. They met with Jack Jones several times in the pre-draft process. This is a little bit high for him. I'm keep saying that. Jeez. Jack Jones, though, a story that I would say is very, very similar to what the Patriots had with J.C. Jackson and Malcolm Butler. Jack Jones originally committed to USC. He was a Trojan. He played at USC for a year, and then he flunked out at USC for academic reasons and eventually transferred to Arizona State. A very, very sticky, very, very good man coverage corner, got really good ball skills. This is a good football player, and they've met with him a bunch. He just has a little bit of a checkered past, and I think the reasons why they met with him so often was to kind of clear the off-field stuff a little bit, right? So Jack Jones, I think, has high-end coverage talent. I think he's a good player. I think he can cover. I personally would have liked to see Zion McCollum or Tyreek Woolen there, but it's been very clear since the get-go that Jack Jones is going to be one of their guys. So this one is a very predictable pick. The Patriots have been in on Jack Jones for a really long time. I think they met with him 3 times in the pre-draft process. So there you have it. Jack Jones to the Patriots. They do double dip at corner, just not any of the corners we thought of, which, shocker. Surprise, surprise, right?
Jack Jones, in terms of consensus ranking, this about right?
I'm not even going to say it. No. Consensus ranking, look, on a pure ability, the 4th round for Jack Jones isn't terrible, right? This is about where he probably would have gone if he was a clean prospect. Then this is where he probably would have gone. The 2 stories that I'll tell with Jack Jones off the field. I mentioned that he flunked out of USC. That was what originally got him kicked off the team at USC. At some point, he also got busted for a B&E breaking into a Panda Express at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Who hasn't done that, though?
That's what I said to Alex the other day when we were talking about it.
I'm
the
fairly
kid's
sure.
20 years old, and he wanted some Chinese food at 3 o'clock.
I'm pretty sure I've jumped the counter at Lucky Wah back in the day.
Right. So
yeah.
I'm not really overreacting to that by any means. But this is the type of things that you see. This is a highly recruited player out of high school, a 5-star recruit. Like I mentioned, USC guy originally. And he has some really, really good flashes of coverage talent on tape when you watch him. And sticky man coverage corner. To me, I think his best comp is probably somebody like Malcolm Butler, who also had a similar story where he fell off the draft radar a little bit and eventually, ended up with the Patriots as a UDFA. So in a lot of drafts, the consensus board's going to have him as a 6th or 7th round pick, or maybe a priority free agent.
PFF rank 238.
Yeah, no, definitely not going to be close on the consensus board, but they're type of guy. They've been all over him for a couple months now. This is easily one of the most predictable picks of the draft. But I know everybody's going to sigh. I know everybody's going to be upset. The consensus board says this. He's a talented kid. And he can play. So I think let's wait and see on this one. I think he's going to end up being a pretty good pick here. I don't know exactly what his ceiling is. I mentioned Malcolm Butler as a comp. I think from a size standpoint, obviously the story, those types of things, I think that's an accurate assessment of him. Also, Arizona State product. The Patriots have fallen in love with that program for some reason. They've been all over Arizona State.
Well, I mean, when it works, right?
Is that sarcastic?
Oh man.
You can't be surprised by this pick. That's all I'll keep saying is
I think it just sucks to be you, Evan, because all of the homework, all of the studying, you're gonna have to study different in the future.
No, I mean I knew that Jack Jones was going to be on their board. He's on my big spreadsheet, right? I just thought that they would wait a little bit. Now
it is you have in your 7 stages of grief, you have launched all the way into acceptance already. You're like, this is what they do. It's just what they do.
In a draft like this is what they do, right? In a draft that really has no feel to it whatsoever, they're just going and drafting their guys. Like I said, they've been all over Jack Jones. They've been all over him. They've been meeting with him. They've met with him a couple of different times. They worked him out. So he's got real coverage traits. He's got real coverage skill. Right now, at this point of the draft, I mean, Jalen Amore Davis went at 119. Brandon Smith went at 120. I thought both of those guys would be guys they would consider here. Amore Davis, for reference, I had him as CB 18 on my board. I had Jack Jones as CB 21. So we're not like super far off here, right?
Yeah.
In terms of where my rankings were.
He has also another 24-year-old rookie. He'll be 25 during the season.
Yeah, right, because he transferred, and that's this draft, though. I think the criticism of the ages of some of the players, just not even Patriots wise, but just in general, because of the COVID season, everybody's old in this draft. There is no 21-year-old rookies in this draft. Everybody was in college for 5 years.
Everyone is old and they're aging the rest of us with these picks.
Yeah. Everybody was old. Some guys were in college for 6 years, and then you throw in transfers like this kid had and stuff like that. And you're going to, this is exactly what's happening. But yeah, the whole age thing, I wouldn't get too. The Patriots, first of all, don't give a shit about the age, quite frankly. Kyle Duggar was a 25-year-old rookie too. So they really do not care about the age. It's not a factor for them.
When they're only planning on signing them to one contract, I guess it doesn't really matter.
Right. So I think that this is somebody that can seriously, and like, again, with the age thing, you had the COVID season. Some of these guys transferred. So you get to 5 or 6 seasons really quickly because of that. So that's what's going on here with all of those types of things. It just, everybody relax. All right. Everybody take a deep breath. Okay. Jack Jones is, again, really, really talented player. A 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Really good year last year at Arizona State. Really good freshman year at USC. If he had stayed at USC for all 4 or 5 years and didn't have any issues off the field, then this is where he should go. So they see the talent with him, and I think that this is one that you have to expect. Now, the one other thing I would say is maybe Brandon Smith or Jalen Amore Davis was higher on their priority here. And when they got jumped for Brandon Smith by the Panthers at 120, then Jack Jones became their next guy, right? Maybe they were more thinking of Jack Jones at 127 or 137, but they knew they were going to draft him. And at that point, they just took the player because they got jumped by Carolina. I don't know. That's just a theory, right? I don't know, but that's the theory I'm giving out now.
Okay, that's your theory.
I can see it in the chat. I can see it in John's face. Like, this pick, I can't be mad about this pick because I knew it was coming, right? Like, I knew at some point on day 3 they were going to take Jack Jones. It made too much sense. I was hoping that they were going to take him in like the 6th round with one of those 6th round picks. They got 3 of them. That's where I was hoping you would go, but that's not the draft the Patriots are running right now.
Why take 6th rounders in the 6th round, Evan? That's just what they'll be expecting you to do, you know?
It is crazy to me that based off of how they drafted, they clearly have guys rated a lot higher that other teams have a lot lower, other people have a lot lower.
Or as you said, Evan, if you've crossed so many names off the list, you know, like, are there guys they've even evaluated at this point if their list is so small? You know,
well, that's my point is, why make the trade with Houston for the extra 6th and the extra 7th if you're taking Jack Jones in the 4th round and Cole Strange in the 1st round? Like, why add more picks? And then they traded back a couple of times already as well. They traded back in the 1st round, and then they traded back last night in the 3rd round. So why keep accumulating picks in a draft that you have a small board on? That part of it I'm a little bit confused by. But yeah, look, Jack Jones is a really talented player. He went through it a little bit in college. He's got you know, some flags, right? So we'll see.
Yep.
I think the best comp that I can come up with for him is Malcolm Butler. I think some people will go JC Jackson because JC had a similar, you know, started at Florida, transferred to Maryland, you know, that sort of thing. But I look at it and see more Malcolm Butler with Jack Jones. But JC did stay at FBS, right? So he transferred from Florida to Maryland. So I guess in that sense, but I don't see necessarily the pure ball hawking with Jack Jones on the levels that we saw it with JC in college. JC was always going to be an INT machine. That guy had great feel, great ball skills.
Whereas Malcolm is one of those, he's always in your shirt, but he's not making nearly as many plays on the ball.
Right. Yeah. So I think in terms of pro comparison, I'd more steer towards the Malcolm Butler comp.
Yeah. Yep. So that's what you got. And you've also got Malcolm Butler. So Patriots now have, you know, still, oh no, we're missing one. 127 still.
Yeah, we got 127 and 137.
Yeah, 127 and 137. And then to go, Chargers made their pick here at 123, so we're a few picks away. You've double dipped at cornerback, Evan. Again, it's at this point, forget guessing players. It's pointless. But I'll ask you 2 questions. Position of need, you think it would be worth addressing with one of these next 2 picks? Yeah. And just throw me out again, you know, since corner's probably off the board here, throw me out another player that you like that, you know, you might get geeked up if they snatch up here.
Yeah, I think that when I look at the rest of their needs, I still think they need to address the front 7 in some capacity, whether it's a defensive lineman or a linebacker. I think they need to get another body in the front 7 that has some upside. Darian Beavers has had a slide here. Maybe he's somebody that could potentially be on the Patriots' radar. I think that would be a really good value pick here. We talked about the Patriots overdrafting guys. If they get Darian Beavers in the 4th round, that's a guy that they got much later than he was projected to go. He was projected as like a 3rd round pick. They get him here at 127. That would be, believe it or not, John, that would be what we call a steal in the draft, right? So that's a different direction.
Do that.
If they go with Darian Beavers.
Steal stuff like you're robbing a Panda Express.
If we're going positions in need, I still think they address running back today.
That's what I was. So I think is exactly that. Is that I think running back is one of the.
Yeah, so they took Ramondre Stevenson, I think, at 120 last year. So this is sort of the running back round.
And there's the Matt Araiza possibility, which again.
Oh my gosh. No, I don't think that they've given themselves enough of a home run draft at the top to take a punter.
I don't think they care, Evan. I don't think they care. And I think I did think if they were going to take him, they were going to take him right here. Because if you want him, why wait at that point?
Yeah,
A kicker did go. The Jets did take Cade York.
yeah, they took a pure kicker, not a punter. So I don't know.
Was it
I
Jets or
think
the
running
Browns? The
back,
Browns.
I still think defensive front seven, wherever they view that need, whether it's linebacker, whether it's edge, whether it's D line, wherever they feel like they need to get a player that they can plug in, I would expect them to go at least in that direction at some point. And I guess the one other thing I would mention is maybe, and Matt Groh last night said that they're not pigeonholing Cole Strange to guard. They could maybe worker and see where he fits the best.
They
But
do need some O-line depth here, and I wouldn't be
I
stunned to
think
see
a
them double dip.
tackle, I think
Yeah.
a pure left tackle would be a really interesting or a good way to go here with this pick. And I can't remember who's available in that realm. It's not a very deep tackle class. I think Rasheed Walker from Penn State is still on the board. He would probably be my top tackle available. So I could see them going tackle, and that would be an interesting direction to go. And we're at 125 was Erica Azukama from Texas Tech, the wide receiver.
Is there any slot type receiver that you like out there right now?
I do, but I'm not on board with the notion that double dipping at wide receiver makes sense. They after drafting Tyquan Thornton last night, they have 5 wide receivers, and I'm not even including N'Keal Harry because he's going to either be traded or off the team. They have 5 wide receivers that are going to be on the roster next year, currently on the roster with Tyquan Thornton coming into the fold. So are you going to carry 6 guys? And when you draft a guy in the 4th round, you're not cutting a 4th round pick, right? He's going to have to make the team. So what are you doing with them? You know, I guess if you think that one of these guys like a Bo Melton maybe is like a developmental slot, and maybe you think of him as like more like a long-term project as a slot receiver. I think if you're going to double dip at wide receiver, which again, I just don't understand, they don't have the playing time for it. So the guy that they take at this point in the draft, Tyquan Thornton might already have a tough time playing as a rookie with the depth chart that they have. So
I believe Tyquan Thornton is very likely headed for a medical red shirt. That's just my opinion.
So if Tyquan Thornton even gets on the field, that's pushing it. So to draft a receiver in the 4th round here, I could see it, you know, if they pick up like a Britton Covey or Slade Bolden or something like that in the UDFAs, you know, later today, then maybe that's one thing. But in terms of the draft, I don't see it. The one guy that I would mention, you drafted the 4.28 guy on the outside in Tyquan Thornton. Kyle Phillips from UCLA is not a player I'm super high on, but he is a Danny Amendola, Wes Welker type. I wouldn't compare him to Julian Edelman, but I compare him to those 2 guys as a guy that's going to play 90% of the time in the slot, and he's going to run all those little quick routes over the middle, all the juke series option routes and all that kind of stuff, and get open within the first 5 to 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. You already got the down the field guy. So if you're going to draft another wide receiver, you got to pair him with an inside guy. So maybe they look at a guy like Kyle Phillips and they see that value there. But ultimately, I think that we're talking. I think they need to address the defensive front 7 with this next pick. It could be running back.
They are on the clock here, 127. So we'll see what happens.
I'm waiting for so far. I have, as much as people are going crazy about reaches, I've at least heard of everybody that they've drafted so far and have done work on everybody that they've drafted so far. So I'm waiting for the guy that nobody's the Justin Rohrwasser of this draft, right? You know, like who's the guy that I'm gonna have to Google here in a second. So I'm still waiting on that one. But yeah, like
that is another frustrating thing is when they begin a run with the guy, they began a tight end run with Asiasi and Keene, but they drafted like the 6th and 7th rated tight ends. They're the first team to draft a kicker, and they drafted a kicker on no one's board. You know, they started the 2nd round receiver run, and then they drafted Thornton. You do see that happen. So
this is interesting. The Raiders jumped the Patriots and took Neil Farrell from LSU as a nose tackle. So Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler jumped the Pats to make sure that they secured Farrell, which is definitely a player that I had on my radar for the Pats and a potential Patriot fit. So
everyone seems to know what the Patriots are doing, but the Patriots don't seem to know what anyone else is doing.
they've done this twice, right, in this round at least. Who knows? Who knows if they actually would have drafted uh Brandon Smith from Penn State? Who knows? But
And
yeah,
in fact, you don't necessarily always jump just the team you've jumped in front of. They might be jumping the team behind them
right,
as
right.
well. That's just the only one that they could do a deal with. So,
Right. So
um,
they jump, but that is two positions of need, right? That is so it's a running back. It's Pierre Strong. This is a good pick. I actually like Pierre Strong a lot. I didn't think that they would go in this direction. There is some LaShawn McCoy comps out there for Pierre Strong. He is a bigger back, but he's got some real cut on the dime type of lateral quickness and shiftiness. We expected a running back. Here's your running back. This is more, I would say, in that early down back mold. So
yeah,
I would look at a guy like Damian Harris now, who's in a contract year. Maybe they're thinking one step ahead on that one, and maybe they're going to protect themselves there. This is a consensus pick for you, John, though. Okay. This is not somebody that they're going and reaching on. And this is going to really excite Patriots fans too. When I read this off my notes from Pierre Strong, when I watched him on tape, 10 rushing touchdowns of 50 plus yards in his career at South Dakota. He ran a 4.37 40-yard dash.
yeah,
So they're continuing to follow this mold of speed everywhere. So they just drafted one of the fastest wide receiver in the draft in Tyquan Thornton, and one of the fastest, if not the fastest. I think he might have put up the fastest 40 time. It was either him or the guy from Rutgers. I can't remember.
yep.
So Pierre Strong, 4.37.
And I know you're saying bigger, but we're still looking 5'11", about 210.
Yeah. When I say
sort of
bigger,
back
I mean I don't necessarily see him as
as a
like a
scat
James
back.
White
Right.
replacement. This is a guy that ran a lot at South Dakota State, right? Like a real big carries type of player. But again, 10 rushing TDs of 50 plus yards, 4.37. He's got high end home run speed, high end burst through the line of scrimmage. He can hit big plays. He has a knack for finding daylight. He feels cut back lanes. He's got kind of some of that Shady McCoy slitheriness that I mentioned before, lateral jump cuts, gets in and out of tackles. But the big thing that he can do is get downhill and scoot, and the Patriots looking at this, okay, you're pulling Mike Onwenu through the hole, you're pulling Cole Strange through the hole, and now you got a back at 4.37. That's a home run back. Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris, they got some of that slashing ability. They can break off a 15-yard run here, 20-yard run there. This guy can hit it from 80 yards out, right? This is a real, and I think that that's something that they are clearly prioritizing this year. They've talked about it, and the one thing you might not love all the picks that they've made, but the one thing you have to give them credit for, they told us that they were going to focus on speed. They told us that they were going to get faster on offense, and they have certainly done that. This is 3 picks really, because Cole Strange is one of the fastest offensive linemen in the draft too. Not like that matters, but he's a super athletic offensive lineman too. So
Yeah, I mean, athleticism across the board.
At very, very high end 99th percentile type athletes across the board on offense. So they're going to be much faster. I don't know if Pierre Strong is going to play as a rookie because of Damian Harris and because of Ramondre, but they got speed. This is some speed. This is some big play ability by
not known as someone who comes out of the backfield here, and I know that that's an area that
doesn't have a lot of catches on tape.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not somebody that is going to do that. But I to excite Patriots fans some more, I just pulled up the plays that I cut up of his when I was watching him in my film study. I have a file for Pierre Strong that just says "Wow," WOW, because the run is that good, right? It's one of those highlight reel runs. That's going to be the first run that everybody's going to see when they pull up his YouTube highlights in a second here. So I'm excited about this pick. I thought that they would go in a different direction. I thought they would go with more of a pure pass catching back, but this is not a pass catching back.
They still could.
They could double dip. They have those 6th round picks. But some of the early down backs that Alex and I had talked about a little bit more were guys like Hassan Haskins and Aguilar from BYU. Those guys are plotters. Like those guys are more in the, they're thicker, they're bigger. They're like LeGarrette Blunts, Ramondre Stevensons, those types of backs. Pierre Strong ain't that. This guy is quick. He's agile. He's fast. He's explosive. This is, as much as I think that there was a difference in opinion at wide receiver with Tyquan Thornton, my board and their board, the fact that they are adding so much speed on offense is exciting. I don't want to undersell that. Like, I think that that's really something that we should continue to talk about. They have gotten so much faster with these two picks. The Patriots have not had a wide receiver. I mean, they obviously had Cooks and they had Dorsett, but Tyquan Thornton is the fastest wide receiver they've ever drafted, right? Yeah. I mean, 4.28 is ridiculous. And Pierre Strong is one of the fastest
since Bethel, honestly, yeah.
Bethel was actually slower, but Bethel was a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
So
that being said, I mean, they didn't draft him, but Aguilar was a 4.3 something guy also coming out of college.
But this is like, Pierre Strong and Tyquan Thornton. We're talking about track speed. Like there's speed and then there's like track speed. Like Tyquan Thornton could run the 100-meter for the USA team.
Yes,
like
he was recruited as a track and field athlete. Yeah, he's different.
Yeah. Pierre Strong, I think, is also similar in that category, especially at this position, especially at running back.
Yeah,
that kind of speed at running back is a difference maker, and I'll just continue to point that out. It's a really fast player, and I think Patriots fans can be excited about that.
Let me ask you quickly, what do you say to fans out there? And there's a few here in the chat who view this as a redundancy. I know you said, and it's very likely Damian Harris, if he isn't traded, he'll that he's gone after this season, and that's understandable. And again, you could see one of those red shirt sort of years for a running back, which the Patriots often do. They in fact did it with Damian Harris, where he didn't really see the field his rookie year. Stevenson was, on the other hand, was thrust in there. But if you're here, you have fans like Harris, but two, fans really, if not just the fans, the Patriots, we all do, really saw tremendous things out of Ramondre Stevenson last year. So you feel pretty good about the Patriots in that sort of lead back role. And Stevenson is only in year one. So drafting another kind of early down back 1 year after him, what are your thoughts on that? And again, obviously Harris currently being on the roster.
The one thing I will say, because I really like the player. So the one thing that I'll say about Pierre Strong is, although he wasn't used as a pass catching back in college, he's got such great athleticism and such great speed that maybe they could develop him. He's not going to be James White, right? He's not James White. Maybe he's a little bit closer to Shane Vereen, though, or somebody like that they can develop in that vein and maybe get a little bit more pass catching ability. When you have
they did draft Ridley and Vereen in the early year to kind of be the Thunder and Lightning sort of 1-2.
When you have a guy that has 4.37 speed and has the agility that he has and has the explosiveness in the 10-yard split, his 10-yard split was 1.5 seconds. That's the 91st percentile. So this guy's explosive. I mean,
that was actually, I think, faster than that might even be faster than Thornton's.
Thornton might have more of that long speed, right? So it just.
But Thornton's was still considered elite, even though he has a longer stride.
Right.
And his wasn't as fast as that. So that is incredible.
So you look at it, and I would say that I wouldn't, just because he only had 62 career catches, just because on his scouting report at NFL.com, it doesn't say that he's a pure pass catcher. I wouldn't sleep on the fact that Pierre Strong could develop into a pass catcher down the road, or at least a little bit more of a pass catching threat than, let's say, like Damian Harris has been, right? I think that there is a little bit more to him than that in terms of athleticism. Now, the one thing I will say is, in the reps that I did see him catch the ball out of the backfield, he's not a natural hands catcher. So that's going to be something that they're going to have to develop with him. But he's a running back. We're not talking about a wide receiver that has shaky hands. We're talking about a running back that needs to develop that skill. So that would be the one thing I would say that would be holding him back, is that he's not exactly he doesn't look like a natural catching the football out of the backfield, but he's got all the athletic profile in the world to do it. So if you figure James White will be good to go. Maybe JJ Taylor gets some reps as the pass catching back this year, and you continue to develop Strong in that capacity. I think eventually you'll have a guy that is going to be a really good player for you, and definitely a really good early down and between the tackles runner, and maybe potentially he could develop more as a pass catcher. I wouldn't completely say that he's going to be a zero as a receiver. I think he's got too much athleticism.
I'm not saying zero. It just isn't necessarily in his current bag, but it is something that you never know if it's something that he can develop into. One more pick here at 137, and again, we kind of sort of, I wouldn't say fully guessed this, but we did hint at running back, and it did come through here with that. So again, I know you're still talking. I mean, right now, this is the last player you're going to take that you think can reasonably contribute for you and play football, like possibly, in a way that matters
to me, because when you frame it like
there's no fifth rounders, and then you're taking a bunch of flyers and special teamers and things like that in the 6th round. So this is the last chance you have to grab a player that you might actually use. So what do you think?
So Matt Ariza is not the first punter drafted.
How about that?
The Baltimore Ravens have taken Jordan Stout from Penn State with the first punter drafted. I had heard a lot of teams had Jordan Stout ahead of Matt Ariza for 2 reasons. He's a little bit more polished, a little bit more ready to go than Ariza. Ariza is, we don't talk, Alex always makes this joke. We don't talk about upside with punters, but Ariza is like an upside punter, right? He's like the wide receiver that ran a 4.28. He's
can you imagine the type of weapon a punter who can flip the field from your own frigging 15-yard line can be, or 20-yard line? And that's kind of,
I can't tell if you're being serious or
no,
not.
I'm not kidding. It really is. We talk about this theoretically. If there was ever a game-changing punter who was so good that they could flip the field from literally almost anywhere, how valuable would that actually be? That would be insanely.
So here's the thing with Ariza.
I can't tell if you're joking.
Yeah. Here's the thing with Ariza. Number one, like I said, he's a little bit raw, right? Yeah. So he's got some things to work out. He has a lot of touchbacks. He has a high percentage of touchbacks on kicks because he's all driver, right? He doesn't have a 9-iron. He's all driver. So that's one thing with him. The other thing is because he also kicked field goals for San Diego State, he has no experience holding. And I know it sounds crazy, but that is a factor for a lot of these NFL teams. Nowadays, the punter is the holder, not the backup quarterback. So the Patriots holder is Jake Bailey, for instance. So if you're going to have to work with him on holding.
Brian Hoyer is born to hold, baby.
Well, the problem with it is that the quarterbacks are busy in practice, right? The quarterbacks, Brian Hoyer is working with the quarterbacks during practice. He's got it. He's got it. Yeah, I mean, he's held a lot in his career. I'm sure
he's got it. He can do it.
He could do it, but that's the thing. That's the knock on Ariza, is a little bit raw, a little bit like a one-trick pony.
I cannot believe there is yet to be a kicker punter in the NFL. I can't believe it.
Yeah. So Jake Bailey can do it, and so can Ariza. Ariza was a pretty solid kicker.
Yes.
So he can do it too. Who knows? I mean, Nick Folk's getting up there in age, right? So at some point, I think Bill Belichick would absolutely love to only have one roster spot.
Oh my God, are you kidding? Then he could have 10 guys dedicated to just special teams. You get like 10 Brandon Boldens at that point.
Right. The problem with it though is, like I keep saying, even for specialists, there's just not a lot of practice time nowadays, right? Like there's just not enough practice time. So if you have to practice every week and you have to practice punting and you have to practice field goals, I mean, that's a lot of work, right? That's a lot of work to pack into 2-hour practice windows during the season. So that's the problem there, right? But look, I can dig the fact that the Patriots are just like, F it, we're just going to get the fastest dudes in the draft on offense. Like, I don't even care. We're just going to get all the fast guys. Like, we're slow everywhere. We're slow as a team. We're going to just get fast everywhere. And that's what they've done so far. So if I'm looking at where they're going to go next, I still think it's front seven. I still think you really need to address somebody that can come in and potentially play right away in the front seven. And my expectation is that it would be another athlete. It'd be Darren Beavers had a decent test at the combine. It was better than people expected, but I'm not sure if it was good enough to in this type of draft. The way the Patriots have kind of gone about it, they're all about speed right now, and that's cool. I'm cool
No,
with that.
again, no one's going to argue speed. Everything that they did is fine, and one would be happy if they did. It's just simply going to come down to reaching and asset management and whether or not you made the best use of use of your assets. You've only got so many. They are really precious. You just don't want to burn them just because you're like, I'm fine with it. I know I could trade back, but it's such a hassle. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. It's addressing speed. There's not a single Patriots fan out there who won't be on board with that.
Right.
They're a slow team. You see how explosive some of these other teams are. They need more explosive playmakers. They need speed everywhere, both sides of the ball. You're not going to argue that for sure. So that's obviously a positive. It's those first and second round picks are just going to remain head scratchers for a long time. And it's just, I don't think nothing's going to really undo that. So one more pick. We're at 133 right now. Patriots are close at 137. So again,
so another punter that's not Ariza just went. It's Jack Camarada has just been drafted. I'll give Alex a pat on the only reason why I have any idea who any of these freaking punters are because of him.
Is Alex gonna know what to do with himself seeing two punters go ahead of his boy?
I don't know. But at this point, dare I say that Matt Ariza is becoming value? I mean, at this point, it's you're getting the consensus best punter in the draft as the third.
Why are we done with Jake? Are we done with Jake after one bad year?
No, I don't actually think it has anything to do with how he punted last year. He's due $4 million this year. He had an escalator in his contract because he made the Pro Bowl and the All Pro team a couple years ago, and now he's the highest paid punter in the NFL. For almost $4 million. It's basically the same value as the second round tender that Jacoby Myers signed to come back with the Patriots this offseason as a restricted free agent. So he's expensive. And on top of being expensive, he's in a contract year. So the argument with Jake Bailey is nothing to really do with Jake Bailey per se. It has to do with contract value and what's the best way to manage the cap in that situation. You can essentially restart the clock on a rookie contract on Ariza or one of these other punters and be able to just kind of, restart right at that position and not have to pay Jake Bailey $4 million or not have to sign him to an extension, which I think if they were to sign him an extension, he's going to get a little bit of cash. Like he's a worthy punter to get some money. I'm not saying he's going to make $20 million a year, but you're certainly going to pay him a lot more than you're going to pay a fourth round pick. That's for sure. So I hear the arguments for moving on from Bailey. The down year last year, I think, was a little bit of a factor, but from what I understand, he was dealing with some injuries. So when he was punting last year with his knee, he was on and off the injury report all year. So I think that maybe a healthier Jake Bailey is more like the guy we saw in 2020, but something's going on with Ariza. Maybe the holding thing's a factor. I know it sounds ridiculous, but when he started to talk to special teams guys, if we had Cam McCord on right now, the Patriots special teams coordinator, or Joe Judge or someone like that, they would tell you that nowadays, Belichick talked about it. He was asked a question last season about long snappers. Remember, he went like 45 minutes on long snappers. And one of the points that he made was that operation, long snapper, holder, kicker, when it's the punter that's the holder, those guys can just work together around the clock as a threesome, and those guys don't have to go other places, right? The backup quarterback doesn't have to go run scout team, so he can't be holding on the field goal attempts that they're practicing on the side field. When it's those three guys as the battery for that operation, they can just get in rep after rep after rep, and I think that that's a really key thing for the Patriots in that regard. So I think that the fact that Ariza is not a holder and wasn't a holder in college is a factor here for teams, which I know, again, I know it sounds ridiculous, but when you're drafting special teams, you got to start to think about some of these things, right?
Well, that's why you get paid the big bucks, because you think about these things. Um, and
I
it
only
is
think the only reason why I think about these things, John, is because I covered the Patriots. If I
no,
covered any other team, let's face it, I would not.
no, I get it. And you're right. The Bailey thing is interesting because you're talking about a guy who went from 700,000, 800,000 to 4 million just like that in
Right.
1 year and a contract year. So obviously,
Yeah, it's a new. It was a new clause in the CBA on rookie contracts. If a rookie makes the Pro Bowl on his rookie contract,
someone asked here, why are they talking about punters? I don't know. We're in that kind of mode
we're
right now
talking about punters because two
because
punters
they
just
might
got drafted.
two punters got drafted and the Patriots might be in the market for one. And
Yeah.
this very buzzy one out there is still available and hasn't been taken yet. And, we'll see what happens there. But yeah, 134 is in. We're a couple of picks away here.
Yeah.
What else? What else are you thinking here from this
I
position?
keep saying, I would love to see them add a player in the defensive front seven, whether it's a defensive lineman or a linebacker, edge defender, whatever the case may be. I still think that that's the area of their roster that they haven't hit yet, that I feel like they absolutely have to hit. They took the back, they took the receiver, they took two corners, they took the lineman. They pretty much have. Another thing I'll say about this draft, John, like, it's not the draft I would have had. It's not the draft you would have had. Like, if we ran a mock draft and we ran what we would do, Marcus Jones is probably the only guy I would have picked out of the group that they picked so far. But with that being said, the positions that they have drafted make total sense.
I
Like,
feel
they
like
drafted the positions we knew that they needed to
I
draft.
know, it's just funny. It's like if you look at the Chiefs draft could be the Patriots draft,
Easily.
in a lot of ways. And you look at
Yeah.
some of the players they took, these are all players that you liked at each of those positions. With the cornerback in the first round that we accidentally thought the Patriots had taken at 21. And then Sky. Did it take Sky in the second round?
Chiefs, yeah, they did.
Yeah. So it is interesting, and the Chiefs just made a pick now. We'll see which player that Evan really loves that the Chiefs took here.
Joshua Williams, fine.
Meh.
Yeah.
Meh.
Meh. So I think the Patriots are technically on the clock because everybody's like way behind.
Everyone's behind. Yep.
Yeah. So it's we haven't heard 136 yet. That's the next pick to be announced, but the Patriots are at 137 here in this round. So like I said, like I was saying a second ago, though, it might not have been the draft it might not have been the prospects that you would have picked at those positions, but this is exactly the positions that we all expected them to go after, right? Guard, wide receiver, corner, running back. So far, that the only position that maybe
linebacker did not happen.
Linebacker. So they still have some linebackers out there. I can't believe that Darian Beavers is still on the board here. Real impact stud playmaker for Cincinnati last year, who obviously was in the college football playoff. He's a really good football player. He tested better than expected. He performed well at the Senior Bowl. Senior Bowl one-on-ones in coverage. He looked a lot smoother and a lot better in coverage than people were expecting. So I'm actually really shocked that he's still here because he's a guy that was constantly around the football for Cincinnati. So 136 is in. The Bengals took Cordell Volson from North Dakota State, a big tackle. I thought maybe the Patriots would be interested in him. Right tackle prospect, like 340, 350 pounds, kind of like a Trent Brown, Michael Onwenu build. Really big power run blocker. So if the Patriots are going to go OT, if they're going to go tackle here, we're seeing a little bit of a run at tackle. We're seeing a little bit of a run at punter, obviously, which is something that they could dip into here as well. But this is another one of those drafts where, for better or worse, the Patriots have kind of followed the runs a little bit. They've sort of jumped on the bandwagon when the time came. Or in the first round, the guards came flying off the board. Kenyon Green, Zion Johnson go in the teens. Tyler Linderbaum goes in the 20s, and they grab their guy Cole Strange at 29. Then at wide receiver, we saw more Pickens, Pierce, and obviously Thornton go right in a cluster of picks. And then at corner, they've kind of done the same thing. And at running back today, they've done the same thing. So if right now, reading the board, I would say that certainly a punter. I mean, that's definitely possible. And I would say linebacker would be the other spot that I'm still looking for them to target, or at least somebody in the defensive front seven. But it's been moving quickly, so we should find out here in a second. And I'm fully expected, after knowing all their picks so far, for this one to be completely
Oh yeah,
out of left field. Yeah, they got to get me. They got to get me eventually, right? I mean, it wouldn't be the draft if they didn't get me eventually. So we'll see what happens here.
yeah. So again, Patriots here about to make their third selection of the fourth round. They picked at 121 and again at 127. And 137 here is coming up. Sorry, I'm a little wonky on the graphics. Let me see if I can get it up there.
We're like I said, Volson goes. I'm pretty sure. Maybe the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Rasheed Walker from Penn State is still out there, tackle, who's a good tackle prospect from Penn State. He can play. I'm trying to think what other tackles are out there. The tackle class is really good. Kind of falls off a cliff here a little bit, to be honest. So it's not a really deep tackle class this year, and I didn't really love the tackle class to begin with, honestly, other than the top three guys, obviously, who are all top 10 picks. So
right,
we'll see which direction they go on here. They are still on the clock. I mean, maybe they do have a gap here, right? 137. Their next pick is what one because they traded 158, so their next pick is not till 183, I think it is, or maybe 200. So they do have a little bit of a gap here. They hate the fifth round, though. So
yeah, they got out of the fifth round. They divested.
So they could just decide to punt on the fifth round, but we'll see. I thought Jack Jones and was kind of going to be towards the end of their draft, right? So maybe they're getting towards the end of that board. I'm actually surprised that they took Jack Jones ahead of Pierre Strong, to be honest with you. I thought Pierre Strong, they kind of maybe took a little bit more of a risk if you're talking about which player could they have lost,
well,
right?
They made a pick is in according to NFL Network. I don't have it yet.
We'll get it here on Twitter in a second.
Yep, we should get it shortly.
But yeah, I thought Pierre Strong was going to go off the board well before Jack Jones. This year has just been. I feel bad for. I know you feel bad for me, but I honestly feel bad for all those people that put so much work into the consensus boards that we all use. You know, like Araf Hassan at the Athletic.
Quarterback.
They took a quarterback.
Bailey Zappe.
Okay, Bailey Zappe. All right,
Zappe. Zappe. Z-A-P-P-E.
So,
Zappe.
This is a backup quarterback, right? Obviously not Mac Jones, not going to take his job, but
Western Kentucky.
When you look at backup quarterback options in the draft, to me, it was between two guys. It was between Zappe, who they take here, and Caleb will be a little bit later. Zappe he's a poor man's Mac Jones, right? He's a good processor, accurate pocket passer. And when you talk about backup quarterbacks, you want to make sure that your backup quarterback can mimic what your starting quarterback does. If you have a backup quarterback that's, I know a lot of Patriots fans know the name De'Ara King from Miami. If De'Ara King's your backup quarterback, it's a completely different offense, right? It's like having Mac Jones backup Cam Newton. What are you doing, right? It's a completely different system. So Bailey Zappe is one of those guys that is in kind of like that Brian Hoyer mold, right? Where you can basically just, if God forbid Mac Jones were to get hurt, Bailey Zappe is a player that can step in and nothing changes. Everything around it stays the same, and it's the same offense. We've been talking about backup quarterbacks. Fourth round for a backup quarterback was not what I was expecting, but I should just stop saying that because this whole draft is not what I'm expecting. Bailey Zappe, though, clearly there's two things going on here. One, at wide receiver, N'Keal Harry, if they have any sort of trade call on the phone right now for N'Keal Harry, his bags are already packed and he's already on the plane, right? And the other one is Jared.
Why is that?
Because of Tyquan Thornton, right? N'Keal Harry is out the building. The other guy that looks like is out the building right now is Jared Stidham. So Bailey Zappe comes in. Brian Hoyer is your backup this year. He's your de facto quarterback coach, if you will. And Zappe is now going to be your long-term backup QB to Mac Jones. a lot of people really like the value of Zappe. It's a bad quarterback class, and there's going to be some people I think that are going to have Bailey Zappe as one of the better guys out of this group. He's put up insane numbers in college. He's really accurate, like I said, good processor. So he's somebody that projects as a long-term backup quarterback for the Patriots.
Well, it's again, that's not the kind of thing that
So here's the numbers I was looking
geeks
for.
up a fan base. A
So I
guy
was
who
looking for his
when you
his
draft a
numbers.
guy you hope never plays, that's not the most exciting thing.
Well, we're in the point of the draft. Clearly,
But
the
I
Patriots
understand it's the point of the draft. But again, there were still some needs that could have been filled and a couple of players, that you could take
I
there.
know.
I understand this. Again, you're trying to do business here, and there are needs that you have, and one of those needs is potentially a backup quarterback long term beyond.
So obviously, Matt Jones is the guy. But listen to these numbers. At Western Kentucky last year, he broke the single season NCAA record that was previously held by Joe Burrow. He had 5,967 passing yards last year and 62 touchdowns at Western Kentucky. 62 touchdowns. He is considered the smartest quarterback prospect in the draft, too. I should mention that. Player coach. That's like kind of the scout term, right? Or on-field coach or whatever scouting term you want to use there. This is a long-term backup quarterback. And I'm with you in that there were other areas of the roster. And I think the biggest thing that you look at now is there's such a gap between where their next pick is and this pick. That
Is this a fourth round pick though? Or is this a sixth round pick?
Oh no, Zappe was a consensus fourth round pick. Like this is not. They're not like picking him out of left field. Like this is not a UDFA that they picked in the fourth round. He was considered to be here. I want to say right in the middle of the fourth round.
I've seen him after. I mean, kind of after maybe. The top 4 or 5, I saw his name pop up in the 6, 7, 8 range in terms of overall quarterbacks. And again, not a great class, but after the top guys that went, Zappe again was considered. Yeah, I'm seeing here now 107 PFF grade. So yeah.
No, this is a consensus pick. I would say that so far Marcus Jones and Bailey Zappe and Pierre Strong. Those 3 guys are all consensus picks, right? Yep. Those are all guys that were lined up to the board and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I think Bailey Zappe is a useful backup quarterback. I'm with you that they probably could have drafted a player, especially at linebacker, that maybe could have helped them in a bigger capacity. And like you said, you hope that Bailey Zappe never plays it down for the Patriots. That's the hope. And they probably could have gotten somebody that could contribute and could play. I think a lot of comparisons, if you're looking for a player comp, I said Brian Hoyer. I think a lot of people see like Nick Mullins in him too. That's like a decent one as well. But yeah, we talked about him. It's earlier than I would have. I pegged him as the backup quarterback in the 6th round. But maybe they feel like they can still get talent. Maybe they like some of the guys in the 6th round better than I do. Who knows? But you look at punter now. You can forget, this is not going to be a punter draft for the Patriots. Arise is going to go here in the 5th round. Stout's gone. The other punter that Alex really liked is gone too. Kamara, whatever his name is. So we're kind of out of punter range at this point.
You're out of punter range. Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird draft, man. Weird draft. What else are you going to say?
Well, what we do know is that's it for the 4th round. There's no 5th rounders. There's only 6th rounders. So let's put a bow on the beginning of day 3 so far. Are you pleased with the selections?
The most exciting one by far to me is Pierre Strong.
It's Pierre Strong, right?
I think that he's a legitimate running back prospect. I mentioned the home run speed. I mentioned the lateral cuts and the smoothness of his running style. But to me, all 3 of these guys, and obviously most of all Zappe, I don't know if any of these guys play next year. I think at this point in the draft, they've kind of looked at it and said, we're kind of the guys that we think could contribute to us in year one are kind of done. We're kind of off the board at this point. It's Jack Jones, I mean, maybe could. That Jack Jones is more of like an upside pick. So if he comes in and he hits that upside, then maybe. But I still think that he's somebody that's going to need a year in the system, that's going to need to be groomed, that's going to need to be brought along a little bit as well. The best player out of the day three guys so far is Pierre Strong. That's the guy that I'm most excited about. But I'm not super sure that any of these guys are going to contribute in 2022. This list to me looks like a little bit more of a long-term play, especially with Strong and Zappe. Like those two
I mean,
guys.
in reality, is I don't know what you're going to expect out of Thornton in year one either. So you could be looking at year two for a lot of these guys. I think Strange is the only one expected to jump right in and play.
Yeah, I guess that's
and
fair.
Marcus Jones, you might see on some special teams.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's fair. I can't really argue too much with you on that one. Tyquan Thornton, I think, could play if it still is not going well for Nelson Aguilar, right? And that's not a fit. Then potentially you could see him play in that role, in that field stretching role as a rookie, where he's basically just kind of running wind sprints on the outside for the most part. But I hope not. When I talk to people like last year, for instance, when we would talk to Trags when he was out at Bengals camp, he was like, guys, Jamar Chase is just different, right? Like he was just right away, day one of training camp, he was like, Chase is just unreal, And you talk to other people, obviously Chase is a top 10 pick, but you talk to other people that were in the AJ Brown's rookie camp, or were in DK Metcalf's rookie camp, or were in Deebo Samuel's rookie camp, and you just know it right away with these guys, right? Justin Jefferson's rookie camp, right. CeeDee Lamb, it instantly flashes for these players, and I hope that that's the case with Tyquan Thornton, because I say that on the contrast, I knew right away with N'Keal Harry that he didn't have the speed to be what they thought he was going to be. You could just tell as soon as they were in camp. Stephon Gilmore could not have been more up his shirt for that rookie mini camp and rookie training camp with N'Keal. And I hope that Tyquan Thornton shows me something when we get out there. Even we're going to be able to go to OTAs and mini camp like next month. I even hope it's right. Or it's actually this month. I hope it's right away. I hope we can see it then. Because most of the time at that position, you either have it or you don't. There's really no in between. It's either you're a stud or you're going to bust out of the league. Like there's really no gray area. So we'll see. But yeah, this is
how many people. Let me ask you this question, because you're right. You do see it fast. And N'Keal, I know a lot of the reporting around N'Keal was cautious. At first, because people didn't want to overreact to what they were seeing. But I think the general vibe among many of us who were down there watching, and a lot of you guys who are tracking every single play during training camp, was, like, I'm not seeing it here. So how many people have you not? So my question is, how many times does that happen where you've seen one of these kind of camps early and not seen what you wanted to see and had that person turn it around?
It's a good question. Trying to think off the top of my head if anybody was like that. Honestly, not a lot of guys. Like as soon as we got into
when
camp,
you see them play against NFL caliber people and they're lined up against them, and you see sometimes it's like, oh no, they can't keep up. They can't get right. You can see it.
Yeah. So in 2020, for instance, very first week of training camp, that was a closed training camp. There was not a lot of us there. Very first week of training camp, Kyle Duggar made a one-handed interception over the middle on a Cam Newton pass. And all of us were like, holy crap, right? Yeah. Like, oh, damn. And after that practice, I remember talking to, it was either Devin McCourty or Adrian Phillips. I think it was Adrian Phillips. And Adrian Phillips was like, this dude's different. Like this guy
physically, you knew he would belonged,
and I remember Adrian Phillips being like, the only thing that I've seen like this is Derwin James. And all of us were like, whoa, you're just like Derwin James. Like,
right.
Let's calm down. You know what I mean? But that was sort of with Kyle Duggar, it was instantaneous. Like, he was a difference maker instantaneously. And honestly, it felt like his rookie training camp that they almost were holding him back because they didn't want him to get too big for his bridges and, stuff like that. So Kyle Duggar, I knew right away. N'Keal and Juwan Williams, on the other hand, you knew right away in the other direction, right? You knew that they just didn't move the way that they needed to move, and they weren't fast enough, and they weren't explosive enough, and that was the difference. A guy like Tyquan Thornton, when we get out to OTAs at the end of the month, it's OTAs, it's glorified 7-on-7, it's touch football. He should be a monster.
He'll look great because he's going to just be run fast. That's what you do. But as soon as it's contact and holding your ground and being able to run stride for stride for somebody who's pressing you and contested catches and that stuff, and he puts his little beanpole frame up against him, that's going to be a different story, which is fine if you're running by people, which, you can do. But I mean, again, that's the difference in the NFL. And that's why guys sometimes with just straight line speed, they're not competitive like an Aguilar or like a Dorsett, because they're just not able to physically kind of compete with people all the way down on the field. That slows enough where that explosive speed is almost negated.
Yeah. So I if we don't see it with Tyquan Thornton in OTAs and in minicamp, then it's one of those situations where then you're already like, ugh, because that he should thrive in that type of environment. Nobody can tackle him. Nobody can really be that physical with him. That should be Tyquan Thornton's show when he's out there. So we'll see. But I like, he's grown on me as a player. I will say that. He has grown on me. I see a lot. His releases are really good. And we've talked about releases and how that's been an issue for N'Keal Harry his entire career. Tyquan Thornton is the opposite. He's sudden. He's explosive. He can move laterally. He can avoid press coverage with his footwork and his lower half. So he's got that ability. I think the other thing that they really like about him is ball skills down the field. His ability to adjust body control, track the football in the air. They like that about him. So I think that he's got all the traits. There's a rep against TCU I put up on my Twitter that was like the perfect rep for a deep ball, right? He gets off press coverage, moves the corner, gets the inside track, leans back into it to hold the line, explodes through the cut, and then the ball is like completely off target, and he's able to adjust
just
in the air and contort his body and make the catch. Like that, you watch that and you're like, that's a complete play. That's like a Tyreek Hill kind of play, right? And that's what you're looking for with him all the time. So we'll see if that happens. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's this fourth round to me screams long-term 2023 view and beyond, right? We're thinking about long-term backup quarterback, Damian Harris's replacement at running back, and a corner that they just absolutely love in Jack Jones for whatever reason. Let's hope that they're right about the evaluation.
Right. Okay. So thanks again for hanging with us, guys. We made it through round 4. There's no picks in round 5 and a bunch in round 6 coming up here. So we may pop back later in the day and put a little bow on the day once things wrap up here. But we will not be doing blow by blow 6th round selections. But Evan will be tracking it and covering it and giving you all of his commentary, both on Twitter, on CLNS Media, and of course, our YouTube channel, Patriots Press Pass, where we'll have individual profiles of each of the players who were taken. So if you haven't already, head on over there and subscribe. Right here, Patriots Press Pass on YouTube. You're watching probably on that right now. If you haven't subscribed already, do so. Also, if you want, turn on your notifications. You'll be notified when we go live in the event that we do. As we said, we might pop on later today and just kind of wrap things up. And who knows, there could be trades. There could be other surprises, other things worth talking about. And if that happens, we will be here to bring it to you. Thank you for everyone who hung out through the 3 days. This has been fun. We've been talking about this, just tracking Evan's expressions and reactions and his demeanor, over time.
We should try to get. I know I'm giving Amit more work here, but my initial
like a stop motion
to each pick would be hilarious.
Oh, right, exactly. Like, oh no, John. Like, what, Evan? What? Yeah, oh no. They
Oh,
did it
no.
again.
Yeah, the Cole Strange pick of both of us. I think both of us were ready to hurl. We were.
I was like,
Yeah.
that was something.
We'll have in the chat. We'll definitely have 6th and 7th round coverage. Don't worry about it. We'll
Yeah.
breakdowns
We
on all
will.
the players.
We're not doing blow by blow 6th round coverage, but we will talk about all the players
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah.
Yes, we promise. We'll just come back up kind of after it's done, rather than go pick by pick through that 6th round there. But we will have 6th and 7th round coverage, no doubt about it, guys. So thank you guys for hanging out. Thanks for being active in the chat. Thanks for being part of our Patriots family and community. As I said, we're back with more of this. And of course, Evan and Alex are going to jump back and do a full draft wrap, I believe, tomorrow. Is that right, Evan?
Yes, tomorrow we'll do Patriots beat, recapping today and the whole draft. Yeah.
Today and the whole draft, exactly. So we'll be back with some late round pick analysis for you guys, we promise. So keep it here. Follow us here on Twitter, John_Zannis or Easy Lazar, or Patriots at Patriots CLNS. And you'll for notifications there for when that show is going to happen. We'll kind of schedule it later on in the day when we have a better idea of the timing of everything. But Evan has to go talk to some prospects and do some writing, so he's going to go do that. We'll be back later. Thanks all.